Hmm? Oh, is that what you just said? Sorry, I apologize. Oh. I'd like to convene the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board special meeting here on July 8th. I'll have our secretary, Ringel, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alper.
Present.
Commissioner Menz.
Here.
Commissioner Musich. Absent. Commissioner Olson. Absent. Commissioner Rucker.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson. Absent. Commissioner Vice President Abeni.
Here.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Being this is a special meeting and we have one topic to discuss, we do not need to have an approval of the agenda. So our stated purpose here is to discuss by the commissioners as well as staff regarding our status of the contract negotiations between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and Local 363. So I'd like to start out our meeting with a presentation by staff, and I'm going to then defer then to Superintendent Bangor.
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. Thank you. I'm just going to start reading a statement, then we'll get started. We'll hand this over to Assistant Superintendent Barrick, who will then be followed by Director Weissman, and we will present to this board. So as you may know, this is the first strike in the 141-year history of the Park Board. While this is really uncharted territory for many of us, we are being very thoughtful and thorough in making these decisions. Since becoming superintendent in 2019, I've successfully advocated for higher wages and additional positions within Local 363 and throughout the organization. I will continue to do so. The Park Board is committed to being an employer of choice. We are committed to providing all NPRB employees fair, equitable compensation and benefits. We have done comparison jobs based on actual duties performed, not just job titles. We will continue to conduct job and salary comparisons across this organization and make adjustments if and when needed. I think you'll see in the presentations from Assistant Superintendent of Environmental Stewardship Jeremy Barrick and Director of Finance Weissman show that our last, best, and final offer to 363 is fair and equitable. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Assistant Superintendent Barrick to begin the presentation.
Thank you. Welcome, Assistant Superintendent Barrick.
Good evening, President Forney and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to present to you an update on the status of the contract negotiations with Local 363. Superintendent Bangor said I will start the presentation, and then Director Weissman, I will cover the status of the negotiations themselves, and then I'll turn it over to Director Weissman to discuss the financial nuances and implications of the current state of affairs. So, as you're all aware, we have 9 collective bargaining agreements at the Park Board, 2 of which are with Local 363, one for the regular unit members, which are the full-time employees, and one with the seasonal. We have 2 other contracts that are currently under contract, but they do have a wage opener in '24, and then all of the other contracts will be expiring at the end of this year. So I say that to say all other units, with the exception of the 2 that are in a wage opener, are currently have a wage established for '24, and the negotiations and the work that we're doing with 363 now will set a precedent for '25 and '26. So as we approach negotiations, we look to the MPRB values, and starting with equitable. We want our work distribution to be equitable, we want the expectations of our employees to be equitable, and we want the compensation to be equitable. We value sustainability as an organization, not only environmentally, but also fiscally. We have to be fiscally sustainable. We value being connected. We want our workforce connected to each other and the work. We value our independence, and we want to maintain that competitive wage independent of other similar employees. And accountability. We want our folks to be accountable to each other and the public, And then innovative, we value the innovation. We want to be able to adapt to the changing needs of the park system and embrace technology to meet those needs. So those are the values that we start with as we start to lay out our course in contract negotiations. When we think about the overall process, we start by looking at, as a contract is going to be coming up for negotiation, we identify any changes in civil service, state and local laws. We look at the contracts in terms of grievances we've received or points of contention. And then we also we have a conversation with our operations managers and supervisors to understand if there's any points of concern, contention that we would want to address in the contract language. We develop contract language around those things that we propose as part of the negotiations. And we also look at our budgets, we analyze our current wages, and we prepare wage offers based on that. And we prioritize resolving the contract language before we settle the wage. So that's a bit of our process. So again, two separate contracts with Local 363, one with the regular unit full-time. On the right, you can see the positions that are represented. It's about 220 different people in those various job classifications. And we assemble a negotiation team based on that, where we have a robust representation of everyone involved, starting with human resources, finance, the various departments that those job classifications predominantly report in, the executive team member that oversees the majority of those departments, and then legal counsel. And we follow the same process for the seasonal unit negotiations, but in that contract, there's 4 titles represented, which equates to about 130 people working, and the negotiation team still includes the HR, finance, legal, and then the departments that those 4 titles report to. And so if we look at the timeline of negotiations with 363, Local 363 so far, and it's a side-by-side comparison here of the regular unit to the seasonal unit, and you'll see both contracts were set to expire 12/31/23. We received our notice of intent to negotiate on October 24th, 23. We were able to meet on the regular unit for the first time December 7th in 23 and in advance of the expiration. However, on the seasonal contract, we were not able to meet for our first time until April 8th. And then would note there was a date scheduled for February 12th. However, there was an emergency within the negotiation team of the union, so they had requested that we cancel the seasonal, as well as if you go to the left column, you'll see that we met 3 times for the regular unit, 12/7, 12/21, and 1/23. We did have a cancellation there on 2/15, so there was a week there in February that it was requested that we cancel, and we obviously honored that. You'll notice that on the regular unit contract, the 363 filed for mediation on February 8th, and on the seasonal contract, the mediation was filed on April 16th. In the regular unit, we met 5 times in mediation, including the last time on July 1st. And on the seasonal unit, we met 2 times in mediation, both the beginning and the end of May. We received a notice of intent to strike on June 20th for both contracts. And we did meet 1 time during the mandatory 10-day cool-off period of July 1st, where the MPRB did propose a last best and final offer for the regular unit contract. Unfortunately, we were not able to meet on the seasonal contract during the 10-day cool-off period. And in the end, both contracts expired at 12:01 a.m. on July 2nd. So if we go to the last best and final offer for the regular unit, I'll walk you through each of the components that we put forward. So starting with contract dates, we are seeking a 3-year contract effective January 1, 24 through 12/31, 26. And our wages that we've proposed during that time frame, we've proposed a 2.75% effective 1/1/24 on wage only. Other units currently under contract in 1/1/24 have received a 2.5% wage only. We also proposed the elimination of step 11, which is a probationary step. It's a 6-month probationary step. And we would propose that we eliminate that probationary step at the first pay period after ratification. And in turn, employees would start at step 1, a higher wage than the step 11 probationary. And you'll see further down, we've proposed changing to a 12-month probation in regards to that. So you're no longer in a 6-month probationary step. You would be in a 1-year step. And so in turn, and in tune with civil service, a 12-month probation. We also noticed that in the current wage table of the contract, the steps for the arborist crew leader and the service area crew leader didn't match exactly. There were a few cents off, so we've proposed that those match effective 1/1/24. In 1/1/25, we would propose a 4.5% wage-only increase and a market rate adjustment of 50 cents per hour for each of the titles listed there. And I believe there's 12 different titles listed there, and those titles were selected based on feedback in negotiations where the gap between the highest step for the titles listed and the highest step of the crew leader of those titles or the supervisors of those titles was greater than 24%. And so our proposal is to raise the 50% wage adjustment to close that gap a little bit. And then in 1/1/26, we've proposed 3% on wages only with another 50-cent market rate adjustment for those same job titles.
That's not all the job titles.
So when you go to the wage comparisons, this is not part of the last, best, and final. This is an explanation on the wage comparisons. So we look at job titles versus duties. And job titles can be inconsistent from organization to organization. We have many different titles compared to others, and we look at the minimum qualifications in education, experience, and licensure. And so the MPRB, because we have a large workforce that's specialized, we can have different job requirements and push the specialization requirements into the proper areas. So for us, our park keeper titles and our arborist titles do not require a commercial driver's license or a boiler's license. And our education experience and licensures, that leads to a higher pay. And so like I mentioned, with the workforce being specialized versus generalized, positions that have higher qualifications typically have a higher pay. And again, the specialized, for example, our arborists work with mobile equipment operators. We don't have them operating the large equipment while performing arborist duties. So we've split the duties a bit and have different pay scales for each. And so when we look at the League of Minnesota Studies, or League of Minnesota Cities wage study, and we look at the job titles, we have found that in just looking at job titles and duties, our current maximum is over $4 more than the range of maximum based on wages only. And this is an example of where the crew leader job descriptions have pieces that other cities have in their regular job descriptions. This is a chart you're all familiar with or have seen before. This is the wage comparison chart analyzing MPRB's wage growth at the top in comparison to other entities in the surrounding area, Ramsey County, City of St. Paul, City of Minneapolis, and Hennepin County. You can see that since 2019, our cumulative wage growth has been 14.4%, while others range from 9.6 to 12.6. The bottom chart, bottom left chart, is the annual increases. So taking into account the annual step increase, as well as the annual wage increase, as well as the step increases, you can see an employee's wage growth in their first 4 years. And then if you look on the right side, the bottom right side, that chart breaks out the different job titles and their wage growth and wage progression as new employees over the course of the years. So when it comes to, that's the wage, then when we look at the contract language that the MPRB has put forward, what you're looking at is literally a copy and paste of what was in the last, best, and final offer, where blue text with a strike is prevailing language or current language in the contract that we are proposing the elimination of. And red underline is new language we're proposing adding. So under union security, we're proposing a change in the title to eliminate the fair share fees checkoff, and as well as updating the language as a result of the Janus decision. Fair share is no longer, so we've proposed updating the contract to reflect that. We've proposed adding section 1.03, which is the bargaining unit information notification visitation. And that is that we agree that the union security provisions of this agreement comply with the Minnesota Public Employee Labor Relations Act. And then there would be a renumbering that would need to happen with the language. So we'd renumber union 1.04 union leave and 1.05. And then we've proposed language around union stewards. Currently, there is no language in the contract. This is language that's similar in other collective bargaining units at the Park Board, where we would designate certain bargaining, we would outline the process and the way in which the union may designate certain bargaining unit employees to act as stewards, and we would ask that they inform us of that. And then the number of stewards would be, we have proposed that there would be at least one designated steward for each shift of each employer's principal work area. So each shift of each work unit, forestry, asset management, et cetera. And then activities of the stewards, we want to clarify when union steward activity would be granted reasonable time off with pay to investigate or present grievances to the employer. And so that's clarifying language that's currently not in the contract in other collective bargaining unit contracts. Grievance procedure is something that's come up. We have had, I think, upwards of 70 plus grievances in the 7 years. I've been here with within this contract, and so there's a 6-step process. We're proposing revisions to the first 3 steps. Prevailing wage has 1 meeting in the process. We've heard from 363, they desire more meetings and would rather meet face-to-face. And so we've proposed that in the first step, they would meet with the manager as opposed to the immediate supervisor. And then in the second step, we would propose that that manager receive it in writing at step 2. And then in step 3, we've added a meeting here at the director level. So manager to director with a meeting. In terms of advancement, we have proposed that employees hired after the ratification of this contract would be put into a 12-month probationary period. This goes back to the elimination of step 11, and they would start at step 1. We understand there's some concern around the language of after completing the probationary period, the employees must complete a 12-month satisfactory work in each of the next steps before advancing to the next step. So again, this is language that we have in every other collective bargaining agreement here at the Park Board, with the exception of the 49ers who do not have steps based on their tenure or service. They have their steps based on the acquisition of certifications with the Automotive Service Excellence certifications. Detailing of foreman and crew leader. This has been another source of several grievances in the recent past. So we have proposed a revision to the language that clarifies the practice within each department, both forestry and asset management. And so you can see here the red underline is what we would propose adding. Blue strike is what we propose removing. So for instance, we want to remove the word et cetera to add clarity to the contract, and then clarify that when there's an absence of 3 consecutive days or more, we would detail someone into those positions on day 1 of the absence. So when it's incidental sick leave, we would start the detail on the 3rd day of the consecutive absence. And then at the end, the bottom there's some language around qualification for these details. And so you can see the current language is in black, and blue strike, but we would like clarification around, provided that the employee has completed their probationary period, has not received a verbal or written within 6 months, and has not received a suspension or demotion within 24 months. We have a tentative agreement, we believe, as we left the table, on section 6.03 golf. This was language clarification on the requirements of a golf course foreman and their membership with the GCSAA. And so we're asking them to obtain and retain a Class C license instead of a Class 1. We will pay for that training. That's prevailing language. And then you can see the strike. That is language that's old and dating back to May of 2014. So we propose the removal of that language, but then a change at the bottom of, rather than require that certification at the time of hire, we would ask folks to have that within 6 months of hire. Section 6.03 golf, there was a proposal brought forward asking to increase the number of full-time golf course park keepers at each of the 18 hole courses. Management is open to that with the conversation of potentially eliminating seasonal golf course park positions to fund the full-time positions. This is something we've done in other contracts where we're taking seasonal positions and converting it into a full-time position. Helps with the budget. The jobs also then come with benefits. 6.02 overtime accrual. This is a tentative agreement. The last time we walked away, and that was the addition of all bargaining units shall be compensated for the hours worked. Just as a clarification on a practice and a process here, not all of our employees enter their own payroll. Some of them, their supervisors enter their payroll. And so we've got language here to clarify how it's handled for each. And then in golf, we want to clarify that their golf employees will be compensated for overtime in accordance with section 6.03 and the appendix F. Distribution and posting of overtime, we've proposed a revision to the title of that section of the contract, recognizing the special services section is no longer an entity, and it is now the asset management and asset management maintenance. And then you'll see the language in the paragraph there. We no longer use the terms district, we use service area, so we would update that language. And then a list of the overtime worked and offered shall be posted as the current prevailing language. We would propose that those acknowledge the practice that is most used right now, which is electronically via email, spreadsheets, text messaging, but there's a tracked record. So holidays falling on the weekend is another thing that we believe we have a tentative agreement, and that's just clarification of the current practice that's happening, and that's when a holiday falls on the employee's normal scheduled work day, the employee will have that day off as their holiday. And so for employees on modified schedules, when a holiday falls on their normal scheduled day off, employees will be paid 8 hours for the holiday. That's, again, the current practice, but not in the contract. Sick and safe leave has come up, and so we would propose that employees may use their sick and safe leave pursuant to the board's sick and safe leave policy and comply with the Minnesota Earned Sick and Safe Leave Time, sick and safe time, as well as the Minneapolis Sick and Safe Time Ordinance and Civil Service Rules. Bidding, this is another source of grievances in the past, and there's 2 sections here, one for how forestry seniority bidding is done, and you'll see the next section is on how asset management or maintenance does their seniority bidding. In forestry, it's a simple revision of striking district foreman as that who decides the appointment and moving it to the director of forestry. And in maintenance, we would acknowledge that park keepers and horticulturists bid twice annually, and we would move the date from November to October to better match the operation around ice rinks. And then crew leaders bid following a vacancy. Currently, the contract, we had a grievance around this. This was the requested solution at the time, was to have the crew leaders bid following a vacancy, and we're agreeing to that in contract language. In terms of safety, we've proposed a new article, Article 19, on safety, and this is language that we have in other collective bargaining agreements, specifically the trades, where we acknowledge the policy of the employer is to provide for the safety of its employees by providing work-safe conditions, safe work areas, and safe work methods. Employees have the responsibility to use all provided safety equipment and procedures, and shall cooperate in all safety and accident prevention programs, and shall diligently observe all safety rules promulgated by the employer. And the employer shall have the responsibility to host safety committee meetings, and designated employees shall have the responsibility to attend, and safety issues shall be reported to the risk and safety administrator. And that's a new position that might be getting on 6 years at this point that the park board added. And then safety glasses, a clarification there. We will provide the prescription safety glasses for those that are required to wear safety glasses, lenses and frames which meet our specifications. And then we will not, however, provide reimbursement for costs associated with eye exams or replacement lenses if they're lost or stolen. And then on Appendix A, so Appendix A is our wage table. Within that wage table in Appendix A are some provisions at the bottom. We're proposing, in the last round of negotiations, we added a premium of 75 cents an hour when performing encampment cleanup and requires the use of personal protective equipment. We're proposing doubling that to $1.50 an hour. And then in trainings and certifications, we would add a new Article 20 that acknowledges that the employer shall cover the costs, all associated costs of securing and maintaining all certifications, licensures, and trainings for bargaining unit members that are required for their current job description. Back to Appendix A, wages. We believe we have a tentative agreement over the elimination of provisions 10 and 11, and those are italicized there. Those were two provisions we added in the last negotiation, where we added a step 5 for the park keeper and arborists and a step 5 for horticulturists. And that is now the practice, and that is now what's in the contract. So we have a tentative agreement to remove those provisions. Appendix A, we would remove the reference to a 6-month probationary period in Appendix A, and then provisions 2 and 8 follow the prevailing language in Article 3. And then Appendix B is our healthcare letter of agreement. So we understand that's come up a couple of times. And so some background here, this was not part of the last, best, and final, but some background on the healthcare letter of agreement. So the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board is part of the City of Minneapolis insurance pools. Both the Park Board and Local 363 participate in the City of Minneapolis Benefits Labor Management Committee. And with that, then, we all come to an agreement on the insurance. And so we offer a competitive package. It's insured by Medica. There's one plan with 6 different providers offering a range of covered services. And for an individual, the annual deductible is $2,000, and for a family, it's $4,000. The Park Board contributes $684 a month for single coverage, plus $100 a month toward an HRA VEBA, health savings. And so that results in, for an individual, an employee pays anywhere from $6 to $138 a month, depending on the selection of their plan and the participation in our wellness plan. Otherwise, in a standard rate, it's $60 to $194 a month, depending on the selection. And then for a family, the Park Board contributes $1,846 a month, plus $200 towards the HRA VEBA. And those prices range from $80 to $435 a month if you're participating in the wellness plan, or $230 to $594, depending on selection and the standard rate. Okay, and so other final things on the last, best, and final. Appendix C was the reasonable suspicion drug, alcohol, and cannabis testing. We propose removing that all the way and adding it to the body of the contract, that employees will comply with the MPRB's drug, alcohol, and cannabis testing and drug-free workplace policy for non-DOT employees. So this is for employees that do not have a commercial driver's license as part of their job requirements. And then on Appendix D, This is an agreement we had around the park keeper trainee program, and we propose that we renew that. Appendix E is the park keeper bid system review. This is a tentative agreement to remove this expired agreement. This was from the last round of negotiations where we entered into an LOA to review the park keeper bid system, looking for opportunities there to create some flexibility in the management of the parks. Appendix F, park keeper golf course bid rights. This is a tentative agreement to renew that agreement. This kind of lays out terms and conditions around park keepers on the golf courses. Excuse me. And then Appendix G, this was an agreement that's expired, and we've tentatively agreed to removing it, and this was in regards to COVID frontline worker pay. Appendix H, which is the pesticide applicator licensing requirement, tentative agreement in removing that requirement of the pesticide applicator license. And with that, I will turn it over to Director Wiseman.
Thank you. Welcome, Director Wiseman.
Good evening, President Forney and Commissioners. I am going to go through a financial update. As you know, on Wednesday evening, July 10th, the Administration and Finance Committee will consider the maximum property tax levy increase for 2025. We are adopting a biennial budget. However, we will only levy taxes annually. So the maximum tax levy request is for 2025 only. So kind of to level set the conversation around our local 363 in comparison to the city 363, our local members make up 35% of the MPRB full-time workforce. 92% of those employees work within the general fund. Local 363 members at the city of Minneapolis make up approximately 11% of the full-time workforce, with approximately 30% working in the general fund and the balance working in city enterprise operations. The MPRB is heavily reliant on property taxes, while the city has more diversified revenues. So for 2024, our general fund revenues by major sources, 79% is property taxes. When you look at our expenditures by major category, 72% of our general fund budget is personnel costs. So the union negotiations financial calculations, the management's last best and final offer is estimated to cost $4.6 million over the 3 years of the contract. The last union proposal received is estimated to cost $6.7 million, a difference of $2.1 million or 45% higher than the management's offer. To fund the management's proposal, property taxes would need to be increased by approximately 1.25% in 25 and 1% in 26. Property taxes would need to be increased approximately 2.1% in 25 and 1.5% in 26 to fund the union proposal. Other financial factors, property tax collections are down due to tax court settlements, and this is largely in the commercial corridors of the downtown areas. So the real impact to our revenues was a loss of $1.2 million in 2023 and an estimated $1 million loss in 2024, which impacts general fund reserves and budget flexibility in the near term. And the $1 million for 2024 is being estimated based on the June tax collections that we received last week. So it does look like the collections will be low again this year. You had the city assessor present the city 2024 assessment report to this board. And in that report, commercial, industrial, and apartment market values are declining at a greater rate than residential. Minneapolis residential properties will bear more of the tax burden in 2025 and beyond. So now I want to take a look at our property tax increase history. Property taxes on average have risen 4.4% over the last 20 years. Over the last 10 years, property taxes have increased an average of 5.3% due to the 20-year neighborhood park plan, youth investment, and system equity investment. The highest tax increase of 10% occurred in 2017 with the implementation of MPP 20. MPRB property taxes were increased by $3 million to improve maintenance and repair service levels for our neighborhood parks. The next biggest is 5.8. So we go from 10% down to 5.8 as the next largest. And that was in 2022 when property taxes were increased by $1.3 million for youth investment. This reflects 363 position growth with these categories of investments that I just discussed. So MPP 20 was a response to return maintenance and repair of neighborhood parks to pre-recession levels as years of disinvestment had taken its toll. System equity investment is a response to providing the same level of service to system expansion and increased usage of our parks. Both address the concerns of 363 members regarding workloads and service levels. So you can see what we have currently added through 2024 is 28 full-time positions and 4.75 FTEs of part-time seasonal workers. System equity investment planned in the next 5 years will add an additional 7 363 members full-time and 4.25 of seasonal workers. So when we look at our general fund 5-year projections, and again, this is very high level, this is slightly different than the presentation, the slide that was provided to you during the budget retreats, because it has been updated for additional information, including the last best and final offer, as well as other adjustments as we learn more about wages and union negotiations. So this is including all personnel costs, not just 363. So as you can see, the next 3-year tax increase projections are all well above the MPRB averages for tax increases and would actually be in the top 4 highest property taxes in the last 20 years, property tax increase. So we had 10% as our highest, 25 at 9.94, 26 at 7.24, and 27 at 6.36 would in fact be the top 4 highest property tax increases in the last 20 years. So the general fund budget is estimated to increase by $7.6 million in 2025 and $6.1 million in 2026. The change of $7.6 million reflects a $6 million increase, or 79.1% of the total, for personnel costs, and $1.6 million, or 20.9%, for other expenditures. 2025 is seeing the biggest impact to personnel costs due to the 4.5% wage adjustment, market adjustments, reclassifications, increases in benefit costs, including workers' compensation, para, and healthcare. It also includes system equity investment for Graco Park and the addition of one project manager position. This addresses all positions and all unions within the general fund. The 2026 change of $6.1 million reflects a $4.4 million increase, or 71.7% of the total for personnel costs. This includes system equity investment for Upper Harbor Terminal and an additional project manager position. And again, this addresses all positions and all unions within the general fund. All right, so the Board of Estimate and Taxation was established by the legislature. The Board of Estimate and Taxation consists of 6 members: the mayor, city council president, and the chair of the city council budget committee. It includes 1 park board commissioner and 2 elected members from citywide. The BET sets the maximum property tax levy for the city, MPRB, Municipal Building Commission, and Public Housing Authority. So although the MPRB has its own taxing authority, the MPRB by resolution must request annually the property tax levy maximum amount that the BET should set for the MPRB. The BET sets the maximum annual tax levy increase on or before September 30th of each year for the next budget year. So this is the maximum property tax levy request, and I'm reflecting it both as the management proposal as well as the most recent union proposal. So the 9.94% increase and the 7.24% increase added in the union proposal would be a 10.79% increase in 25 and a 7.74% increase in 2026. So the MPRB will need the support of the mayor, city council members, and BET elected officials for whatever our maximum property tax levy request is determined to be. And again, the Administration and Finance Committee will discuss the maximum property tax levy on July 10th, this coming Wednesday evening, and then the full board will consider the resolution on July 24th. So you will be making these decisions pretty quickly. Now, my history here at the Park Board, 30 plus years of history, is that it is very, very difficult, and we have a very uphill battle to get a property tax levy that is at the magnitude that we are estimating for our last, best, and final, or the union's proposal. And so we would need, if we do not get the 9.94% increase, so the examples I have on here, 4.4 is our increase over the last, average increase over the last 4 years. 5.3 is the average increase over the last 10 years. And then I just threw on there 6, 7, and 8%. So we will be facing a budget deficit between 1.6 million or 4.6 million if we do not get the support of the BET for our maximum tax levy. As you can see by these potential deficit numbers, The MPRB is at risk of losing all the ground it has made through NPP 20, system equity investment, and our youth investment.
Thank you for that presentation. I just want to remind people there is no open time, but also that we were joined by two of our commissioners, and that's Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Thompson. So, oh, I'm sorry, Superintendent Bangor, you want to conclude? I apologize.
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. I'm just going to be real brief here. So first, I want to thank everybody for being here today and being respectful. I really do greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being here, everyone that's sitting here today. I also want to thank this board and the staff that have done a lot of work to bring this forward. We can answer questions, of course. So there's a lot of discussion around wage, and so we can, of course, address that. But I would like to ask the board for your continued support and the union to vote on the last best final offer. Anything else would be negotiating against ourselves. And you've seen the presentation where we are at. We sent out an email earlier today, and I want to quickly address that. And we were working on this for over a week. We just happened to get it out here today. But the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board was made aware of the striking of Local 363 employees planned to return to work on Thursday, July 11th, and this is in the statement. The MPB will welcome any and all striking employees back on Thursday. No employee who went on strike will be turned away. In order to keep those striking employees from returning to work, the MPRB would have to keep all Local 363 members from working. Keeping those employees who have continued to work throughout this period from working, and keeping those employees who wish to return to work from working is not the MPRB value set. As you know, this is the first strike in the Park Board's history in 141 years. Since MPRB and Local 363 leadership were not able to reach an agreement, city employees, Local 363, regular and seasonal, expired at 12:01 a.m. on July 2nd, as Assistant Superintendent Barrick explained. Following the contract expiration, all Local 363 employees who return to work will be compensated under the current wage scale and follow civil service and PRB policies and procedures, including requesting vacation time, requesting comp time, and using sick time. And I will say it again, MPRB leadership remains committed to being an employer of choice. We are committed to providing all MPRB's employees fair, equitable compensation and benefits. With that, President Forney and Commissioners, I'll turn this back over to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm grateful for this presentation, and we'll now turn it over to the discussion with our members of the board with this information. Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, President Forney. I'd like to first start off with saying that I appreciate my fellow board members being here. This meeting was called by a few of us because we wanted some clarity, and the presentation by Assistant Superintendent Barrick and the Finance Chair Wiseman, thank you so much. That was really informative, and now that's out and we understand what's happening. I also want to make sure that I don't think that this signifies anything regarding the negotiations that have gone on. I believe that Superintendent Bangora and the negotiating team has done their best. I also agree that the union negotiating team has been doing their best. You are absolutely right. Nobody has been there. We have to trust that process. When the process, this is out, I know that some of my colleagues are concerned because this is out of process with what our board is historically doing. It is also out of process with what a lot of boards do. However, when the process breaks down and we have the first strike, I feel it our obligation and our duty to not only help support our superintendent, who we are in charge of, but also to support our workers and to make sure that the negotiations are continuing. There are some serious concerns that come to our table that make it challenging. I would like to ask a quick question and some clarifying questions, if that's possible.
We're here to discuss. Yes, go ahead.
So we have made a last and final offer, and we are asking the union membership to vote on that offer. I would like some clarification around how the offers change between what the offer was before the strike vote and then the last and final offer. I'm hearing different things, and I just kind of want to understand how those offers change, or if they have.
President Forney, Commissioners, off the top of my head, the offers have changed. If I recall correctly, we started at 2.5, 3.5, 3.5 at the very beginning. I believe we went to 2.7543, and now we are at 2.75453. With the 50-cent an hour wage adjustments, those were, that was like a last best offer. We had, I think it was somewhere in 8 or 9 job titles that we had proposed, the 50 cents. 363 countered with additional titles. We agreed to those titles, but we didn't agree to their a market rate adjustment increase. We kept it at the 50 cents we had initially proposed.
I'm more wondering about the language of the contract and the step increases being subject to management approval. Can you explain what that means? I'm not looking for I'm not looking for applause here. I'm actually trying to figure out how we can move these negotiations forward.
So on that language, when that was added, I'm not sure exactly. It's common for us, we have proposed it in previous negotiations. Again, it's common language in other collective bargaining agreements. And whenever we have the chance, it's in trades 320, AFSCME, police, some others. But when it came up, we always propose that consistent language. The way we see it is, this is bargaining. And if we're going to increase something, we're going to also tie it to an increase in expectation, especially if other groups have that expectation.
So as a commissioner on this board, I also am a member of a union. And I am concerned that we are taking that back and basically putting it in management approval for that discretion of how workers are performing. It is significantly challenging to accept that as a union negotiating team, and it feels difficult to bring that to membership. And I'm not speaking for 363, I'm speaking as how do we move this forward?
Thank you. Other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Alper.
Thank you. So I was one of the commissioners today here that asked for this meeting, and so I'm really grateful to hearing the details because it's good to understand what's on the table today. So I just want to say thank you, Assistant Superintendent Barrick and Director Weissman, for your presentation today. So as I sit here today, I'm holding two things as in my hand as a resident of Minneapolis, as an elected official, representing an area of our city. Two things. So one of which is that our workers, they are the backbone of our park system. It's so clear. The people that make up our workforce are what we do. You know, the vast majority of our funds go towards staff. And I think that makes sense because we would not have an incredible park system without our workers. So I'm holding that. I'm also holding the fact that 79% of our revenue comes from property taxes that are paid by people who own homes or people who rent in the city. And this is especially hard this year because tax revenues are down. You've seen it in the paper. You don't need to hear it from Director Wiseman. We have downtown, which used to pay the majority of, bring in the most of our revenue. That is not the same as it once was, and it's not going to return. So we are faced with a very challenging position. Raise the levy more, which is not completely at our discretion with the BET, or cut expenses. And honestly, we're probably going to have to do both this year. So I just want to, I know I'm up against a time limit, but if commissioners would allow me just to keep going, I'd be grateful, President Forney, and others. But I want to tell this story, a heartwarming story of somebody who wrote me. This is a park board staff member, I believe it's a park keeper, and wrote in about this incredible tale of the work on the ground that happens. And it was a person who, there was a water rescue, somebody fell in who had just had surgery and wasn't able to get out on their own, and one of our park board employees literally saved the life of this person. And that's an amazing story. And so also I have to tell you, this person lives not in Minneapolis, this park keeper, So I want to be cognizant of the work that we are may I, Commissioner Forney, or would you like me to pause?
Is everybody, the rules are, unfortunately, our rules are 3 minutes, so.
Motion to suspend the rules for the purpose of eliminating the time requirement today and leave it at the
Well,
president's discretion.
Well, please wrap it up.
okay. I just want to say this is an amazing story, and the problem is, as I see it, that the people who will see the vast majority of the impact of any levy increases that we will have in our city are the people who live here, and they will see that. It's going to be on residential properties that are going to see these increases. So I believe we are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And we have less flexibility than the city of Minneapolis. They have a bigger pot. They have more diverse funding sources. $2 million to them would be like peanuts. But this is a big deal, a real big deal for us. And so, and at the same time, we've had these massive police misconduct payouts. I mean, 27 million, I think it was in last year or the year before. So,
You can wrap it up.
Yep,
Sorry.
yep, I will.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
thank
need
you.
to.
So on my next 2 minutes or something, I'll come back with my priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? No? Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, President Forney. I just want to say hello to all of our union members. And this is a very challenging situation. Commissioner Menz is in a union. I'm in two. People in blue shirts, I mean, you guys, I recognize the hardship. I ran into a friend of mine from South High. If you didn't hear about it, hopefully you did. Fought for me. And I understand why you guys are here. And as Commissioner Alper said, I want to be kind of plain with everybody here. Our staff is doing what we directed them to do. We said in our budget process that we wanted to take care of our workers. That was a priority to us. And we said that we didn't want to go over 10% to the BET. And so I recognize that that's a huge reason why we're at this place. Now, I don't know the details of, manager this and process that. I don't know it. And I do know that sometimes the work that you do gets lost inside of the experience, and it's only your fellow union members who get what you're going through, right? I will not say that I know what you're going through and you experience. I just know the negotiating parts. And I do know that we as a board, through our budget process, told senior staff those priorities. And I don't know how to rectify it, but I do want to make it clear that that's on us. And in order to change that would be to change our budgetary process at this particular point. So I appreciate you all showing up. A proud union educator. And it's hard. I don't have answers. I'm not claiming to have answers. I just want to tell you that I see you and it's on us. Thanks.
Commissioner Alper for a second time?
Thank you for letting me continue. All right, so just to continue, I think so that brings me to what my priorities are today. And so I think we need to value our workers through better pay, through recognition, opportunities, other aspects of the contract as are available to us. You know, I'm concerned about a large levy increase, and I agree with the direction that we gave as a body to our staff. And I think we need to be thinking about cuts. I think we shouldn't do fireworks next year. I think we should let somebody else, like the Twins, do fireworks. Somebody will fill in. We could hit the pause button on certain capital projects. I think I would rather pay our existing staff more and have fewer staff positions. I'm just gonna say it, I've said it before. So I think I'd rather do that. Meet in the middle on, meet where we can. So that's, I don't know. Those are my thoughts, but I wanna be real clear that nobody is getting rich at the park board. Nobody. And at every level, nobody is getting rich. Nobody. This is not United Healthcare Group. This is not Ameriprise. This is not SPS Commerce. So I stand by my statements, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. Commissioner Menz for a second time?
Thank you, President Forney. Can we, Assistant Superintendent Barrick, would you be willing to put up that contract language again, where it was about, I can't remember what slide number it was. It's the manager approval one.
Can you say it? Sorry. President Forney, Commissioners.
Further up. Well, that's something. Maybe you can answer that question too. Like, why are we reducing the amount of stewards?
We're not.
I mean, I really want an honest answer. I don't necessarily disagree with the language or the reduction of stewards. I just want to know what the reasoning is.
So currently, the contract is silent. There are no limits on the number of stewards. So anybody can raise their hand any given day and say, I'm a steward today.
Okay.
And that can create challenges for understanding where employees are and what they're doing. And then there's confusion around payment. Are they on official union time or not, or was that on their own time? We're trying to set clear boundaries, again, similar to the boundaries that are set in other collective bargaining units. We feel that 1 per work unit per shift is a pretty generous and pretty flexible, right? So that's, day shift, evening, modified weekends, those shifts, asset management, trades, whichever, right? They would each have a steward. And we're just asking that we be notified of who those folks are and that we're able to then work with them on their time and get them paid for when they're working with the union and
Okay.
when they're not.
That explains the status. The next slide, I think it is. So this, for me personally, as a board member, is where I find it really difficult, because I talk to workers. I am in the parks. I understand this organization. I'd like to consider I understand this organization deeply at this point, but I can't claim to have been born in Minneapolis. But I sense a culture in the organization where there are punitive actions that are concerned, and I think that this type of language continues and maybe even exasperates that culture. And I think that from this body, what I'm hoping that our body can do is lead by example and making sure that we are supportive of people making mistakes. We are supportive of people being innovative and trying new things. And I think that sometimes language like this in a contract doesn't necessarily support that goal for our park system. And that is really the hugest piece that I'm concerned about as one of the board members up here. And I wanted my colleagues to hear that I trust the negotiating team, but there are certain things that might spark higher levels for workers that aren't just pay. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Commissioner Benny?
Thank you, President Forney. So the process that this falls under is, there's a state statute and there are rules, but are the process, is there like a playbook that's adopted at the beginning of a negotiation? Or, I know you're in mediation, does the mediator kind of dictate the steps in the process or guide the process? How does that work? And where is this in the process, and what would be really the next step?
Sure. President Forney, Commissioners, there is a guide to an extent, and it's somewhat fluid, and it's outlined by those participating. So when we first meet for negotiations, we try to go over some general norms, being respectful, exchange the ideas in writing, so there's no confusion in the end, those types of things. When you hit a point in negotiations where you feel that we need a third party to assist, then both parties have an option to file for mediation. And in this case, 363 filed for mediation. There have been other instances where we've joint filed with the collective bargaining unit. And once it goes to mediation, the Bureau of Mediation Services does have more defined and consistent guides on how things are going to work. And so we have been working with a mediator since whenever that date was. And that initial meeting, again, things are laid out. Mediation will be confidential, we'll be respectful, we're going to assume positive intent, we want open dialogue and conversation. And then it really becomes up to the mediator and how the groups will interact with each other. So sometimes the mediator will have us start together in a room and or they'll keep us apart, and we'll send proposals back and forth in writing. Where we're at here now, when you get to the end of mediation, and that's the last best and final offer and the notice of an intent to strike, really put us outside of mediation and into a 10-day cool-off period. And so within that 10-day cool-off period, we were summoned by the Bureau of Mediation, so we had to show up on July 1st, and we were there until 12:30 a.m. on July 2nd, right? So we started at 9 a.m. and we went through the evening and into the early morning. And now the mediator at this point is in contact with both of the parties, asking where are we at, what's new with you, how are you feeling, and they really don't push one side over the other. That's not in their interest. And so where we're at, management has maintained for us, as Superintendent Bangora said, we've proposed our last best and final offer. We've asked for that to be voted on. 363 has asked that we return to the table, but we really feel without any response or a vote, we're negotiating against ourselves, and we're really we're at the end of the line, as you can see on the budget.
Thank you. Not seeing any other, excuse me, Commissioner Olson.
Just so perhaps this would be for you, Superintendent Bangora. So we haven't been through a process where we've had to deal with cuts, and it seems like no matter which way the negotiations go, it's just a matter of degree of cuts. Is that something that you go to department heads and you say, I'm gonna need X amount from you and you and you, and then they each come back to you and that's presented to us? Are our priorities? So I'm just kind of curious what that process is, because it seems like we're headed there.
President Ford and Commissioner Olson, it's a good question, and it's a combination of things, right? So my responsibility at that time, of course, is to hear the board's priorities, obviously, which we have to keep in consistent with what's being asked from the organization. So we always are looking at the board's priorities when we develop a budget. Every year I've come to the board, we've always made sure that we had board priorities in there, and that's why when you would look at the budget, you would see things that the board had wanted, and so we always make sure that we are addressing those needs within the budget. When it comes to budget cuts, and particularly something maybe this significant, then yes, we would have to go back and we would have to look at the organization as a whole, go back to each division, department, and as an organization, and then look at what we would have to do and what priorities where we would have to find those savings or those cuts. And it's complicated, right? Because, I mean, there's things that we have to do basically to keep the basic things running and the organization functioning. So we would have to look across the organization and make some really difficult decisions. Then, of course, we'd come back to the board with those priorities and the adjustments of the budget, and then the board would have to then obviously take a look at it, make decisions on what we presented. At the end of the day, it's going to be my recommended budget to the board, but the board then, of course, as you know, takes a look at that and then says, no, we don't think this is right here, we think this, or whatever it might be. But we're going to give obviously our best effort to bring to the board a balanced budget based on priorities of the board and what is required by the community to do the work that we do to provide services to the community.
Okay, thanks.
I see your light, Commissioner Menz. It's up to the body here whether or not we want to take you on for a third time, but I'm at least going to insert. When it was requested to have this special meeting, I challenged our legal counsel numerous times. Can we make this an open meeting instead of it being a closed meeting? I think you've heard of our closed meeting. To me, we needed to be transparent, and that's why it was so critical for me to make sure that this was an open meeting. He finally agreed that yes, we could, and I wanted you all to be here and to hear what we're hearing, okay? And just know that we haven't been at the table, but yes, we gave a directive to our superintendent. We've got a big meeting coming up this Wednesday, and when we will be setting the levy and the consequences of what our discussion is here with all of you, it's going to be weighing heavy on all of us. So I just want you all to know, from the bottom of my heart, I really do value all. And this has been difficult for all of us. So thank you for being here. And so I'm going to ask the body whether or not they would like to continue this discussion. Commissioner Menz is going for a third time, and that is not within our rules. Can I get an indication of yay or nay, of yay of allowing him or nay? So all those in favor of allowing Commissioner Menz to speak for a third time, please signify by saying yay.
Yay. Yay.
Those against? Okay, Commissioner Menz, please.
I did make a motion to suspend the rules earlier, but we didn't vote on that. So
Because we
to
didn't
make-
get a second, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, thank
Yeah.
you for that clarification. Thank you for letting me speak. Superintendent Bangura, I'd like to ask a question, because I do think that you have been negotiating in as good a faith as possible. And I'm trying to figure out how this process moves forward if the membership is not, or the union leadership is unwilling to send the contract to a vote. It seems like we're at a stalemate here. I'm wondering what that entails and how long our organization could sustain striking workers. But it is encouraging that we are having people come back to work. So what does that mean for us moving forward, and how do we help ensure that striking workers are that there is an agreed upon contract for them to vote on? Because currently there is not an agreed upon contract for them to vote on with the union leadership.
President Ford and Commissioner Menz, that's a good question. So I haven't, this is obviously the first for us in history, right? So we're working through that. We, as we said before, we had put forward our best, last and final proposal to the union. And we haven't had a response back from that, right? I think that as we go forward, we're going to continue to have discussions. And so we're going to have, we will have, continue to have discussions, and we still are working with BMS and our mediators to kind of come together in the next process. I don't know what that exactly looks like at this moment. But obviously, we want to resolve this. We want to get back, and we want to have everyone working back again within the park system. That's ultimately the goal. And so right now, we have an impasse. We don't have, like I said, the contract is expired. And so we need to come back to the table. And we are willing to do that. We're waiting. We're willing to do that. And I'm going to continue to kind of work with not only our team, but the union to get back to the table. And that's what we want to do. So we will continue to work through that.
So what I'm hearing is you are willing to go back to the table and negotiate on some of the contract language. And I want to be clear, like the worker pay and what's been negotiated, that you have worked within that budget process and what we have directed you to do. But what I'm hearing is you are willing to go, and the negotiation team is willing to go back on some of those contract language issues that may be preventing the union leadership from bringing that to a vote to their membership.
What is currently out, again, I'm sorry, President Forney, Commissioner Menz, I again would have to refer to our negotiating team to make sure that I'm saying the right thing here.
Okay.
What I want and what I am committed to is getting this resolved and finding a solution here, because this is very difficult. And there are a lot of conversations that are out there that are very clear in responses to what I've put forward and responses back. We need to get through that. We presented today in this presentation what the contract is and what we have put forward. So we have disagreements in some of these areas, which we have to get back to. We have disagreements on the fact that there are wages, and we talked about how we met the city's 30% and 10.25, and there's been comments back. We can show those numbers. We need to have those conversations. So we're there. We just have to have these conversations around that. So I will defer to the negotiating team on this. I will defer to how we can get back to the table, but I don't have the answer at this moment on what the next step is. But I do know that we want to get to the table and start to negotiate and really get back to the contract and figure out where we are on this so we can get this resolved and get ratified contract.
Thank you. That would be really encouraging. And I want to say that I know that this process has been challenging. And it's been challenging for the workers, it's been challenging for the union leadership, it's been challenging for our negotiating team, and thank you for working through this. I have pushed in ways that maybe that's inappropriate. Maybe that is not the way that a commissioner or an elected should behave in this instance. That is possible. But I'm doing it from a place of where I support you, Superintendent Bangura. I want you to know that I believe that you care about the workers and this organization deeply. That sometimes these process, when it gets to this point, things become personal and we don't understand how to negotiate further. My only intention in calling this meeting, and I appreciate Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Alper really wanting to have this meeting as well, is that we are all in this together. We are not separate from you. And that is an incredibly important thing for us to understand. We all care about this park system. We all care about you, every person on this board. There are difficult scenarios for us to take into context, and I don't want to diminish that, and I don't want this to be perceived that there's one side or the other. We're all on the same side.
Thank you. Commissioner Schaefer?
I just want to first of all say thank you to the three commissioners who called this meeting. I think it is really helpful in negotiations for there to be a public-facing opportunity for those that are interested from the public, from other employees, to really listen in and get some of the details, and that normally doesn't happen. So thank you for this, bringing this to light. I also want to say thank you to everybody that's here and who has participated over all of our meetings in the last months and shared your voice. It is important. I am a firm believer in hearing the voices that are in our community, and thank you for that commitment of time. I also want to thank you to our staff. I know it's been a tremendous workload for you to have long negotiations added on top of your current workloads, and I just want to recognize that as a commissioner, that I appreciate the long hours and time that have gone into all of this. I have a couple questions that maybe we can continue this discussion on Wednesday. We do have our resolution that we're discussing about the percentage, and I think we could think about how, is there any wiggle room? I can tell you that when I read that language around accountability, and I know that's a scary word about the 12-month period, but I think we have to, in any organization, you have to have some measure of accountability so that jobs can have its standards of workflow. Otherwise, it's disrespectful to the taxpayer and the employee and can cheapen the work that is, the important work that's being done. And I would say that language is extremely important in the contract. But I also think we could look at that percentage and say, is there any wiggle room in that 9% that we could pull back out to increase the wage even a tiny bit more? I'm an ideas person. But I do think we need to really be thoughtful, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see when this contract is brought forward for a vote.
Thank you all. Not seeing any other lights and everything, then I will then adjourn our meeting. Thank you so much.
Let's hear from the union. Do we get a presentation story? The other side. This is one-sided. Where's our presentation?
Why doesn't the union have a presentation?
Why are you Where's the union us in the mail about for our jobs?
What's that about?
Jobs. Oh, this is our fair. You just get to hear from one side.
Same thing they did in
The meeting is adjourned, yes.
You can still answer questions.